G'day, everybody. Welcome back to Drones Down, the podcast. Today, I'm going to be your host. My name is Danny, and with me we have the crew, Ty, Brendan, and Sean. How you guys going today?
Good, mate. Danny.
Yeah, good.
Good stuff. Today's a special one. We've got Isaac Plamer from AVCRM joining us.
Hey, guys.
Good Isaac.
Hey.
Mate, I guess I'll tell everybody a little bit about you, and then we can get started on a little bit of a grilling. Question.
Excellent.
All right, guys. So Isaac leads AVCRM Operations team for both the RPAS and Aerodromes. With a varied background, he entered the compliance world back in 2017 with a keen RPAS interest in both agricultural tech and emergency services. AVCRM works with a wide client base to assist the growth of the Australian RPAS industry, both nationally and abroad. Isaac is also involved with various industries working groups. What can you tell us about yourself?
Thanks. Yeah, pleasure to be here, guys. Really excited to see what you guys are doing and be a part of it, especially early on. So great work. But I guess expanding on what Danny said there is I started out originally, I didn't really have too much interest in aviation. I was at uni I finished my geophysics degree right in the time where sort of the mining world collapsed back in the 2010, 2011. So no opportunity for a job unless I wanted to move to Singapore and sort of all those offshores, which I wasn't sort of interested in. So I ended up working for catering management for stadiums. So I ran a few different stadiums around New South Wales, being Wollongong, and assisted out up at ANZ and all that sort of stuff for football, concert events, that sort of stuff. From there, on the side, I opened up a wildlife management business. And I was also I'm still currently running, but I've got a 1,000-acre farm within the family. So it's a sheep and cattle farm and a bit of mixed cropping as well. So that sort of is where I got my interest for the RPAS world. I went into the multispectral imaging and the data collection for the farming side, and then the thermal imaging and the thermal spotting for wildlife in the wildlife management side. I was doing a lot of conservation work, contract shooting, and wildlife management planning. So I got into that. I ended up getting a contract for a few airports around sort of New South Wales. So just doing wildlife management for there and wildlife mitigations. So I ended up getting my aerodrome reporting officer certificate, which allowed me to operate at the airports by myself without having to have an escort. Got into the aerodrome regulation consulting. And then from there, I ended up in AVCRM. So a little bit about AVCRM is that it started off, it's an Australian company. There's a small team of us. There's 4 directors. They're all aviation background. They come from airspace, airport management, and the RPAS world. So they've got an aerodrome management platform that does all the compliance and risk management for aerodrome operations. So I was sort of at the right place at the right time. They were looking for an ops person. I was very excited to get out of the catering 90-hour weeks. I know my wife was as well.
We all know that feeling. Half of us have come from hospitality of some sort.
Exactly. So it's pretty rough. And right space, the right time. That's where I sort of actually got into what I, can and can't do with a drone.
What sort of time frame was that?
So that was, 2017 is when I joined AVCRM. So I'd been flying probably 2 or 3 years on and off before that, obviously just for my own personal benefit or those conservation jobs with the early thermals. So I've been at AVCRM since then and haven't really looked back.
That's awesome, man.
Very cool.
I'm sure the family farm was good for testing out different techniques and whatnot as well.
Yep, definitely showed me what I shouldn't do, and I think it was an expensive first few months learning how to fly.
Isn't it always?
Yeah. What sort of drones were you using at that time?
So the Phantom 2 is where I started, and then Phantom 3, and I was strapping my own like Sequoias onto them, and all the stuff that looking back on was a bit risky, but got there in the end. And I've had some of the disco parrots and that sort of stuff as well.
Okay.
Was most of the wildlife conservation style stuff, was that more just tracking them and seeing where their movements are going around in their habitats, essentially?
A bit of both. It was probably 50-50, so half that, and then the other half was actually thermal spotting and removing of predators.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So it just made it so much easier to find them at night. A lot less disruptive for the actual native population we're actually trying to protect.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, and that was 2016. So the kit that the guys that are doing it now with is far superior. It's incredible.
So how do you know what? Sorry, Brendan. I was going to say, how do you know what to start out with? Like, obviously, wasn't a lot of information out there for you. So
just trial and error, more or less, and that's why I was not RPAS specific kit. So I was getting a thermal monocular and literally strapping it to the drone, putting it up, bringing it back down, quick replays and general areas. So it was just finding that, this works, this doesn't work, and away we go.
Crazy how all the solutions have changed now. You can almost just buy a Mavic turnkey solution right there with everything kind of in it.
Well, that Mavic Enterprise Advanced is a phenomenal piece of kit. I don't know why you need anything else.
Yeah.
Phenomenal.
Yeah. So are you going out with a crew of people? So you were operating the drone and sort of spotting them and giving them telling them where exactly the predators are, and then they would go out and obviously eliminate the threat.
Yeah, there was 2 or 3 of us in sort of our operation. So we'd all just sort of take turns in what we were doing. So it was a fun little gig, but still do that. I still do that on the side a little bit, but I'm not with the drones anymore.
Okay.
AVCRM, everyone at AVCRM, we made the conscious decision not to operate anymore. So we don't want to, obviously, because we supply to all of our clients across Australia, we don't want to compete with our clients. So I still run the wildlife management, but not from the RPAS space.
Right. Okay. So what type of clientele are requesting that sort of work?
So my first job for the wildlife management side was actually for a Catholic girls' school, and it was removing pigeons from a quadrangle.
Right.
Which is always walking around a private girls' school at night carrying an air rifle. That's my very first job, and it's stuck in my mind.
Wow.
But otherwise, it's people like the local land services, community, organisation wise. Could be anyone.
Yep.
Down to the actual local farmer itself that just has a wild dog problem or etc.
Mm. All right.
Very cool.
That is really cool.
Yeah. Just another world that you can utilize the tech. It's crazy.
Phenomenal. Yeah, it's really cool.
And I guess it's amazing how big some of the land is as well, right? So it's like you said, you needed to use a drone at the time, otherwise you're walking it by foot trying to solve these things.
Oh, I know. If you think about one of the directors of AVCRM, Jonathan King, before he came on here, he used to fly. He was a pilot for a cattle station up in Queensland. And you think of the millions of hectares that they sort of operate, it's just, you can't comprehend it.
Mm.
It's enormous to manage that. Sort of, it takes you 3 days to drive from one side of the farm to the other. Incredible.
Crazy to think about.
So for larger properties like that, would you be using quadcopters or fixed wings?
Oh, well, luckily I never had anything that big. So I don't really have the experience. Like, I think the largest I did was probably around the 1,500 acres or 1,000 hectares sort of thing. So it was all, for the thermal spotting, it was all quadcopters.
Nice.
Yeah. Realistically, sorry.
No, you go.
I was just going to say something like the M300 is obviously perfect for that these days.
Yeah. I was just going to ask, do you see now from where you were back in 2016 to what the tech is now, are you seeing more that space sort of adopting that technology a little bit quicker? Or is it more still a little bit unsure and they're kind of testing the water still?
It's that sort of industry. So the contract shooting and the conservationists, I find it's a very old industry. So it's a lot of people that have been around there for a long time. So the licenses and the certificates and all that you have to do that sort of work, it's quite hard to get, but it's quite easy to maintain it once you've got it. So I know a guy that sort of operates out in the middle of New South Wales, and he's picking up the drones and he's sort of really jumping on it, really embracing it. He's doing it, but I don't know of many others. But I know there's a lot of, obviously you'll see people like Debbie Saunders at Wildlife Drones and Rencon Air and Land. So they're doing a lot of koala spotting with thermal drones for forestry organisations. So it's definitely coming up, but from different sort of aspects.
It's more, do you think it's more like operators pushing the tech into that industry, or is it more the industry sort of trialing it out, or is it a bit of a mix?
I would say that it's the operators bringing it in.
Okay.
From my perspective, because the operators are like, I know QUT is doing a lot of stuff with koala spotting, thermal koala spotting, and they're bringing out that, and same as I say with some of the forestry corporations, they're bringing it out because, hey, it's a lot easier. They can pinpoint, so they can spot something, they can geotag it, they can say this is exactly where we saw all the koalas, rather than going through with a torch at night and saying, oh, there's one at this tree, X, Y, Z.
I actually can't think how long that would take walking around with a spotlight and trying to find koalas.
Like, have I done that tree?
Yeah.
Can you imagine what's in the forest while you're doing that too?
We don't think about that, Sean. We do not think about that.
No.
Late night in the forest by yourself and the sound koalas make when they're that's creepy enough.
Especially if you're up around somewhere like Belangolo in New South Wales. Some of that Ivan territory.
The last time I was doing a shoot in Belangolo, there was a bunch of black cockatoos flying around, and the sound they were making was just mortifying. Not again. Never doing it again.
That's funny. That's crazy.
So, geophysicist, I think, is what you said. I can't even pronounce it. So
yeah, geophysics.
So what happened with that? Like, you kind of graduated and you
absolutely nothing.
Nothing.
It's not even on the wall here. So
like every good university course.
Yeah, so it was going to be great. I was going to do a lot with it.
But how did you get into it? Like, what made you start into that? Like, you must have had a passion in something. So
rocks, of course.
Rocks.
And the physics of rocks and how rocks move.
Yeah.
So a lot of that, thermographic physics and uplift, and basically I just got really excited by it. And I went into uni sort of to start with that. Probably towards the last year of that degree, I sort of started to noticing that downward slide. I was like, do I finish it? Do I try and change? I'm like, you know what? I've had enough of uni. Get me out of it. Let's just power through and finished it. And then, put that degree on the shelf, and we didn't touch it again until the start of this year, where I used it. I've started my master's in science, so I used it to step me onto something that I actually want to do. So I'm doing Masters of Science in Agriculture. So I'm trying to lean on the precision agriculture, doing agronomy and sort of multispectral on the side as well.
So obviously not that busy in AVCRM as running operations.
No, of course not. No. Of course not.
Yeah, just casually doing
plenty of time.
Business, yeah.
Part-time, of course. Part-time.
Yeah.
Not a monster.
You just don't sleep.
Oh, yeah.
A few other people I know. No sleep, just work.
And you're one of the very few that tends to do a lot of events, or maybe virtual events these days, but soon to change.
Yes,
you're obviously a very busy lad, so it's good to see the Masters. Good luck.
Yeah, cheers. See how we go.
How long is that supposed to take?
I think it's a year and a half full time, so it'll probably take me 5 years, I'd say. I'm going to do a summer sessions as well, so I might be able to do it in 3.5. Cool. Fingers crossed.
Awesome. And what's the plan once you've got that? What's your pivot? Are you pivoting, or what's your plan with that?
No, I think I just want to be able to use it. So again, I've got the wildlife side in the background. We do through AVCRM, we do wildlife management plans for airports as well. So I'm going to lean on it to do that and potentially do some more consulting work. There's a lot of stuff that's integrated, like grass management for it's sort of genetically modified grass seeds that deter birds. So birds will eat the seed and they'll feel sick. So it's about planting that at airports so the birds don't come.
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
That's quite smart.
Super new space, but super exciting.
That is very cool.
So that guy sitting the wrong way with the 22 is going to be out of work because of this genetically modified grass.
No, I don't want to do that because then I'll be out of one job.
As long as you don't hit the plane. So
yeah, exactly.
So I presume it doesn't kill the bird; it just makes it uncomfortable.
Correct. They just go, I'd prefer not to eat that when I can go over here to somewhere else.
It's like a bunch of people going to the pub and drinking way too much. The next day we feel horrible. We still go back to that pub.
That's fair.
Very good analogy, actually.
The bear's obviously smarter, Danny.
They got the right idea.
Yeah.
That is awesome, man.
So let's talk compliance, Isaac.
Yes. My favorite word. I love compliance these days.
So we have a segment on some of the episodes we run, which is called Dummy of the Week, and we show some silly things naturally.
Excellent.
So it was quite fitting to have you on and talk about how we can help some of our listeners about what are the key things they should be learning, I guess. And we obviously think the platforms are great, given we all use the platform. Where can we start talking about some of the basics for people entering someone who's just bought their first drone? What are some of the key things that you think they should pay attention to?
Yeah, so for my honest opinion with entering the drone and the RPAS world is obviously around the licensing and the compliance side of things. So I think the key aspect is to find the right license or the right course that suits what you're doing. So if you want to get into excluded category operations, actually pick out a course that is for excluded category operations, that is purpose-built for your needs. Don't just go out and I'm aware that CASA do their accreditation course, which is great, but if you really want to invest and actually get a start in this sort of industry, get a course that suits you. If a REPL suits you and it suits you to get a license, a remote pilot license and an operator certificate, then do your research, find the right and a reputable trainer to do that. There are a lot of trainers all across Australia. There's a lot of really good ones. There are a lot of some not good ones as well. Do your research, talk to the people that have done it, get some experience, and the REPL, the REOC, and the excluded category, they're all great. So you don't, if you don't need to get an operator certificate, you don't need to get it. You can get excluded category. But it's just finding out what you're going to do and what you want to get out of your drone business.
Solid advice.
So really it sort of circles back around what we've sort of talked about, guys, in the last couple of podcasts is you almost want to choose a niche. Pick a niche of what you want to sort of focus on
100%.
and go all in.
I think like we've sort of said as well, there isn't that many people niching. We find the industry, we've all said it, the industry wants to be generalists in the drone world, and it's not going to work like that. It's really not. And there's so much opportunity in so many different industries that we can apply this to. And I think if people look hard enough, there's definitely a niche out there for them.
Yeah.
So true.
Yeah.
So true.
Yeah.
You can't go in expecting to be able to do a real estate shoot one day, then do a multispectral imagery or a 3D processing the next day. You'll be fending off quotes from a million different people who will do it for cheaper or will do it for less, or they'll do it quicker, or finding a niche is probably some great advice as well, like some of the best that I've heard, because it's so important.
Yep.
And it does take time. It's not something you just think of overnight, like, oh, I'm going to do this for X, Y, Z. Yeah.
No.
Build to it, learn it, research it.
You got to try it as well.
You really do need to invest. Once you figure out that niche, once you decide what you want to do, get the right gear for the job. Don't get something, I'll make it work. Get the minimum you think you need. So if you can only start off with a Mavic and you want to end up on a 300, pick the Mavic that suits you, pick the jobs that you can do, and you know what, play to your equipment and your abilities, but you expect to invest well in your equipment and kit. It's not a cheap business to get started out in.
Technology. Yes. By the time you bought something new comes out.
Exactly right.
That's the disappointing part. But I think also from investing as well, it's also investing your time and really honing in 100%. On the skills and the knowledge in that space. Like, I know a lot of people I've spoken to is like, they're like, oh, I just don't have the money to go and buy the drone. I'm like, well, you don't have to have the fanciest equipment to go and do what you want to do. But right now you don't actually know how to do it. So go out and make mistakes and learn from your errors and build up from that. And then the more jobs you get, the more money you'll have to reinvest into better equipment. So I think that's probably one of the more important parts is if you're going to niche down, you want to become the expert in that space. And that only comes with just spending every day, every night, reading, being part of the community, talking about it, asking questions, and creating a community around you to sort of say, oh, okay, Danny's the expert in that, Ty's the expert in this. And then people will start turning to you for advice. And then that's what you want. That's what you're trying to build at the end of the day.
Yeah, 100%.
So with AVCRM, I mean, we talked about obviously having your OC or with your Ripple. I mean, we've all done the whole spreadsheets and paper and all that jazz, and we obviously all use AVCRM. I think what our belief is, well, mine anyway, I'll talk on my, I think there's so many things that the platform offers to get started and to educate people. I think of, a lot of the things we've talked about in the past is about just, the amount of helipads or restricted airspace or, the 100 other things got to be aware of, which you guys do really well, obviously. How do you kind of see that people should get started on that as well initially, or should they sort of go through that manual process and then go onto a platform? Because, get, like you said, you get the typical, oh, I don't really need it now, I don't have that many jobs. It's another cost, the usual excuses we all make when we want to spend money. So yeah.
I'm a firm believer of start off with the regulations, because you really going through your rep or going through your excluded category, you need to fully understand what you can and can't do. So the joys of here's the shameless plug for AVCRM here, the joys of AVCRM, it tells you exactly what you can and can't do. You don't need to find it. You don't need to understand it because it tells you. We like our clients to be able to say, well, I can't fly here because of X, Y, Z. Having a firm understanding of the regulation, the legislation, and like the advisory circulars and all that sort of stuff is really the basis of compliance and risk management. You can then use the tool of AVCRM to streamline your operations, bringing it onto a paperless system for it to do all of your records management as well as your compliance checklists. But having the firm understanding as that underlying sort of knowledge is so important.
And you'll have, instead of having to follow the changes in regulation, that's your job, right?
Correct. So that takes away compliance. We comply to the regulations, so you don't have to change your processes each time CASA changes. They put out an AC, they put out an amendment to the regulation. So we build that into our workflow. So our workflow is designed, obviously, to maintain excluded, or I would say mainly we do REOC operations. We don't really we don't lean to the like the recreational users at all. I would say probably 95 to 98% of our clientele are REOC holders. Some of them do REOC and excluded category operations as well. Obviously, no issues with that. The system is built to handle both. But But yeah, it's really built to allow you to comply with an intuitive system that requires minimal effort from your part.
Yeah.
And it does. That makes all our lives easier. There's, as Sean mentioned, there's no paper you have to deal with. It's everything's,
it's a one-stop shop.
Exactly.
The one-stop shop that it is absolutely insane. Like I think it's awesome. It definitely saves a hell of a lot of time. And well, if people out there listening are doing it on paper, and I know because I did it on paper for a very long time, trust me, get on board. You'll thank us later.
Absolutely. I think the other important part as well is from if you are starting to get your REOC and you've started fresh and you've freshly got it there, you do have to change your operation and procedure manuals. You can't just sign up to something and think you're all good, because again, those operation procedures and manuals is basically what we have to follow. It's the Bible for us. So that's the benefit as well from AVCRM. Once you jump ship, there's already a preloaded system that you can just basically adopt from your side and lodge it to CASA and say, this is what we're doing. So you don't have to go through that painful process. If you decided to try and build out your own procedures and manuals and manipulate it yourself, that painful process is eliminated once you sort of move over to a platform like you guys. So it does make your life so much easier though. I don't think you can really understand how quickly you can go from creating a job to approving it to them flying compared to what it would take to do it on paper, trying to draw a map, trying to understand where things are and everything like that. It's so good.
Whilst you're talking about that map, the good thing about AVCRM is that all of the little compliance tricks that are within the regs. So every single operation that you do, you have to have obviously your GPS position, so your coordinates. You have to have the elevation of that site, the maximum available altitude at that space, as well as the first and last light times for that operation. So AVCRM automatically grabs those for you and puts it onto your paperwork. So, you don't have to find those times at all. So we do all of those little quick grabs that we can do. The system, like populating if your aircraft is serviceable, populating the ARN on your paperwork, all of that sort of stuff is done for you. So you don't have to fiddle with all that sort of stuff for each operation.
So can you talk a little bit about the journey of FCRM? Because obviously the software is quite mature today, and I'm sure you guys got a roadmap of functions coming out over the next 12 months. Yeah. What have been some of the challenges building the software? Because obviously dealing with a regulator that we all have to deal with from time to time, and you probably more so than all of us. So you willing to talk about it, or do you want to stop recording?
No, let's get it out there, I reckon. So in 2017, when I came on, AVCRM was obviously a shell of what it is now. We didn't have maintenance. We didn't have the airspace calculator. So that airspace calculator was the first major build that I was a part of. So as you may be aware, currently there's no regulation saying that you have to use whatever data source for airspace that you have to use. You don't have to use an approved EFB, which is an electronic flight bag for aviation. You just have to use a data source and be able to verify it. So AVCRM, we were the first application out there to use approved air services data. So we have a subscription with Air Services. They're obviously the authority for Australia. And back in the day, there was another company that came out with that around the same time, a little bit after us, which they also published that first iteration of the CASA Can I Fly There app. So now more and more people are doing it, or they're scraping Mapbox to sort of publish it as well. But that airspace calculator, the intricacies involved in that, even in its infancy, were enormous. And I think that took us almost 6 months to build that first time. And then we've gone forward and we've implemented other things such as the whole maintenance section. So the maintenance section within AVCRM is technically the same maintenance system for crewed aviation. So for fixed wing, actual large scale aircraft. It's because, again, a CASA plug here, when they brought out the MOS originally, there was scheduled maintenance requirements to track the airframe, the motor hours, and the propeller hours for anything over 2 kilos. So you had to track how many hours on each individual propeller for an Inspire, an M210, M600, etc. Yeah. However, I think it was 3 or 4 months before the regulations went live, they repealed that section very quietly, I might add. They repealed it very quietly, and we'd already built it. So, we thought, well, we may as well. We've got clients that are obviously building their own crafts that have got the large heavy seeders and sprayers that have to use it because they're over 25 kilos anyway. So they have to follow those regs. But that's the sort of guidance that we get. So CASA will just spit out an amendment or a new regulation, and AVCRM is required to, it's like, all right, well, we have to build this. We don't have an option now, because if we don't build it, all of our clients will be non-compliant. So that's our roadmap. Basically, CASA release regulations and we fix it, and we build it, put our own spin on it, as we always do.
Yeah. When you talk about CASA spitting out a new regulation or variation of the regs, what do you think the motivation behind the changes are? Is it more to be a little bit more cracking down on our operations, or is it a bit of both of they're loosening up because the technology is getting better? We've got platforms like you guys that are supporting the industry to be able to streamline things. Like how's that? Do you know how that decision's being made?
I don't really know, obviously, the inner workings of CASA. A lot of great people working there. The issue, or not the issue, but what I see, I think it's evolving as we go. And there are some parts of regulations that is like, all right, well, we didn't need to go that intense, such as the maintenance side. Or there's things, they're sitting there like the instrument approach to helipad. So a helicopter landing site that had an instrument approach, you couldn't fly within 3 nautical miles. And then they brought that out, or are they bringing that back in? They're evolving, and they're a small team. Honestly, they're a small team. Australia does have some of the world's leading regulation within and compliance in the RPAS industry. We're definitely leading in a lot of that, but because of the speed that the technology is increasing and developing, some things that were valid, as you said before, Brendan, some things that were valid now, in 2 weeks' time, they're going to be invalid. Such a hard industry to work in, especially the regulation of it. So I think CASA are doing a pretty good job. Obviously, like the bringing out of the excluded category, the license and that sort of thing. So there's a lot of, they are definitely fluid when they can be. But definitely a hard space to work in, I'd say.
Could imagine. You like chasing your tail with the movement of technology all the time. Something new is coming out every week, and I'd be pulling my hair out if I was them, to be honest. And it'd be pretty hard to keep up to date. But I guess it's part of the deal when you got to deal with the drones and you're encompassing that in your workflows.
Yeah.
Do you think they're moving quick enough for the RPAS industry?
As the general consensus in the industry at the moment, everyone thinks they're still catching up. They're still chasing their tails a little bit. The industry has just grown way too quickly for anyone to keep up with, realistically. I think they're still catching up. They're still adding. Only just a few months ago, I think they hired another bunch of people. So they're catching up like they're doing now. So the automated airspace, the approvals, and they're investigating the UTMs and that sort of stuff. So they're definitely getting there. But there's just so much to do.
Yeah. And as I said, you're chasing the advancements of technology. It changes that rapidly. It is hard to find that fine line.
Well, with people that are developing, they're obviously developing aircraft that can fly 3,200 nautical miles. They're doing massive flights, but the regulations just can't cope with the technology at the moment. They can't handle it. And it's just always going to be a problem.
Yeah. How do you see, I guess, the drone delivery space and things like that going to be is it going to be sort of dragged out a little bit here in Australia, do you think, because we are, I guess I call it harsh on the regulations and pretty strict, but it's probably a good thing, but it does hinder, workflows and, evolving within the industry quickly. How do you see, I don't know if you're even dealing with people from within the drone delivery space at the moment?
Yeah, I would say that we tend to err on the side of caution. So yes, we can be harsh, but we're always going to be on that side of it, purely because of the potentials. As all of us know, but as some of your listeners may not, any drone is classified as an aircraft. So if you interfere with someone else's drone, you're technically interfering with an aircraft, which is a federal offence. So the penalties and the legislation that falls on these is massive.
So when you hear the stories about someone threatening to shoot down a drone, they're essentially shooting down an aircraft.
Exactly right.
Yeah,
exactly right. But what I think I actually tend to think on the other side of these drone deliveries, I think we're doing some really good stuff, like the introduction of the air park that's coming up. So we're getting the dedicated spaces that we can actually do testing. We can actually try this sort of stuff. That is what we need to be doing. We need to be stepping in that direction.
Yeah.
We can't just base it out of Canberra because Cass is in Canberra and say we'll operate in this suburb. We'll do this. We'll get grounded for 3 months because a bird attacked our drone. That sort of stuff. We're building the dedicated facilities to allow us to explore this in that safe and an observed environment, which is the only way forward.
Yeah.
We definitely don't have many of them in Victoria, if any, that I know of.
Yeah.
So.
I know they had a couple in Queensland, that not for testing and stuff, but just for recreational users. They definitely had them in the Brisbane City Council area.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think as well, Sean, here in Victoria, I don't know too many people trying to push the boundaries of what the industry's doing. I might be living under a rock, but I haven't seen anybody sort of doing anything like drone delivery in Victoria or anything like that. So whether there is no one here in Victoria really trying to push that around here. I know really the only thing I know that Melbourne's trying to do is what is it? Uber for air. I know they've been trying to push that, but
aren't they building a test for that down there? I thought I read yesterday.
I have no idea.
It's out on one of the stadiums or something like that. It's going to be a fly-in, fly-out first test in Australia.
Yeah.
Probably cool to see.
I want to have a go.
What's one of the features, Isaac, you think in AVCRM that you think's quite widely used and probably a must-have or helped operators like us, do you think? Because obviously you get to see all the data. So,
yeah, well, obviously off the bat, the job management, job approvals, that's our bread and butter. That's where we started. That's where we came from. The maintenance section is widely used now, such as all of the emergency services and all of the large-scale organisations these days. They're all doing their 50, their 100 hourly servicing. Obviously, as you guys would know, we released our flight sync feature about a month ago now. Cool. We did, I think it was 17,000 flights we synced in the first 24 hours.
Whoa.
Wow.
Yeah. I remember Jono asked me, it's like, how many do you reckon we did overnight? I'm like, I don't know, 500? He's like, no, 17,000.
Whoa.
Wow.
So that's massive because obviously you're pulling the post-flight information from the craft, and a lot of people, we originally thought a lot of people, all they just want to do is have a look at where they flew and, this is cool. But we took our spin on it, and it's an audit trail. So we can now see exactly where our pilot flew. We use it for post-flight, so breaches and regulation. We use it for maintenance issues. So if the aircraft actually threw a warning or had a battery cell spike, that's what we rely on that data for. And you can export your KMZ files from there, so you can sort of import overlays and a lot of cool stuff. So we, as AVCRM always does, we take what's required and what's requested of us, because everyone here and all other of our clients have asked for that feature for the last 10 years. it took us longer to do it because we wanted to do it properly. We didn't want to just give you a way to close out your jobs with an automated flight time. We wanted to do it properly and give you a usable tool.
Can you talk us through the flight sync and how that works if people don't really understand what that means?
Yeah, so at the moment, we've started off with obviously the DJI aircraft purely because of market saturation. Mm-hmm. In AVCRM, now what you do is you just link that DJI account that you use to fly the drone. And then after each flight, you just make sure that those flight files are synced with your DJI server. AVCRM will automatically grab those, populate them through onto the system. You can say, I'm going to close out job XYZ with flights XYZ, however many you've got. And that grabs your flight time, it grabs your batteries that you use for the job, and then all of your post-flight telemetry as well. So it gives you that extra level of compliance. Now, that sort of stuff is actually required for people doing EV loss and BV loss operations because you have to say, this is where I plan to fly and this is exactly where I did fly. So as I sort of mentioned before, our clientele is mainly the REOC side of things. And they are going for the extended visual line of sight. Now that CASA have made that a bit easier to get. So you don't need full RX pilots for that level of thing now. So giving people the tools to actually compliantly manage that sort of stuff is where we are. And that's what we're about.
It's a good one you touched on there, EV loss and BV loss. Is that something that you're supporting through the platform, or are you looking to sort of work on that?
No, so we've had people flying EV loss and BV loss for the last 3 years, maybe a bit longer, some of our clients. But yeah, so we're fully capable of doing that, setting up and things such as, you have to separate your logbook hours for your operational types and all that sort of stuff. So you got to have different columns, different rows. AVCRM does that for you. So we're fully capable. You can create all your observers and your second observer locations. You can create custom JSAs or pre-flight checklists for that type of operation as well. And full risk management, probably the risk management section, like risk assessments, et cetera, is another widely used feature that we built in as well.
So I don't know if you're allowed to tell us, but what type of work are people using those sort of additional licenses for? Like, is it wind turbine inspections or farm, mapping large scale areas? Everything from small business operation to defense contracting and testing of new aircraft. So we've got people doing EV loss, BV loss. We've got above 400 feet. We've got Antarctic operations. We've got swarm operations as well. So that's another really big space. The swarm in the ag sort of side of thing. That's an exciting space. We've got a few clients that are leading that charge there in Australia. So super impressive. And I guess the people that are listening that have no idea what that means, are you able to break that down?
Sorry. So swarm operations is the license, the sort of the endorsement that you can operate more than one drone at a time, because standard aviation, standard RPAS, you can only operate one drone at a time. Swarm can allow you to operate up to 5 for an automated mission, such as aerial spraying of crops, etc. So that then will lead into eventually the drone light shows side of things. So the drone swarms when you've got thousands of drones.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, we saw, I think, there's a recent video, wasn't there, when a bunch of drones started falling on top of people? Was that in China? Or something?
Yeah, in China.
Yeah.
I haven't seen that one, and I want to see that. I'm going to look that one up now.
Yeah, including
there's a lot of people screaming and running.
Yeah.
Maybe for the free
and
drone.
that's a case of the technology expanding too quickly, so the regulation can't keep up because there's no regulation on. All right, well, 6,000 drones is probably too many.
A little
without proper tried and tested procedures.
Yeah.
So,
Guinness World Records, most drones falling at once.
Yeah, probably got that one, didn't they?
It's terrible.
So is there any, I guess that sort of space is quite niche and unique. So if we go back to our niche and choosing a niche, if someone was trying to pick a niche and go, oh, okay, so that sounds quite interesting, but they're more interested in the light show side of things, where would you say to start right now in that space? Would there be anyone to sort of lean on, or is it start from scratch and see how you go?
Pretty much. As far as I know, there'll be someone doing it and getting ready to release it in Australia. I know there's been a few guys talking of it, but in Australia, I don't know of anyone that's officially started doing it properly. That is that sort of niche that is so specific that if you could nail that operation, you would be booked out for the next 10 years.
One of them's actually on this podcast, but I won't say who it is.
Good, yeah. Well, so there's a few other people that are sort of talking about it, but I would say get in there, get quick. There's a few people to talk to. There's one company in particular, a French company, that have got the best drones in the market for that. So if that person would like to have a chat after this, feel free. We've got some contacts for you. But that is a niche that you could do so well, but would require so much working with the manufacturer, so much working with CASA, because obviously CASA haven't done this before as well.
Yeah.
So you're going to be learning as CASA learn. And it's going to include a lot of extra steps, such as the SORA process, which is the risk management process for BV loss operations. So they'll bring that in as well, and it will be expensive, I guess, is the final word I have to say on that. But again, if you nail it, you'll make your money back so quickly.
It'll be worth the investment.
Oh, God, yeah.
Yeah. Like it says, a lot of work, a lot of stakeholders to work with as well.
Yeah, but again, I pressure that if that person needs a partner, hey.
AVCRM sponsored.
Yeah, we'll all have an AVCRM thing up here if that happened, I reckon.
Yeah. So you can just leave AVCRM out. They don't have
it on the
time.
T-shirts, on the hats and everything.
Yeah.
You can buy the space right here if you want.
No, let's not shamelessly plug the fact that we're selling any space around us.
Oh, we're not doing that.
Drones down under, we sell out.
Yeah.
Everyone has a number, Isaac. Everyone has a number.
That is true. That is true.
Yeah, ours is just really high, unfortunately.
Hey, hold up, you guys are getting paid?
Oh shit! Yeah, sorry, Danny.
Sorry, bud.
You guys shouldn't have missed that meeting.
Yeah. Oh, that's funny.
So given where do you kind of see the next sort of 12 months and 3 years, 5 years? How do you kind of see the industry evolving, Isaac? Obviously, you guys have seen it working with a number of different operators in the country, and you know where everyone's pushing. So again, coming into the industry, where do you think, where would the niche, what sort of niches should people, I don't even know if niches is a word, but
we'll use it. Look, I got to be completely honest with everyone, is that I can't predict where the industry is going to be in 6 months, let alone 12 months. It's just so rapidly expanding. I think it'll take the next 12 to 24 months for the regulations to sort of catch up and be agile enough to support the sort of industry that all of you guys are actually looking, all of you guys are leading the charge in your respective fields in doing what you guys are doing. So I think it's going to take, for the next steps where you want to go, I think it's going to take those regulations a bit to catch up and be sort of agile enough. We're looking at, with the NEAT policy that came out, and then all of that, the CASA and the government asking for input from industry leaders, government leaders in where they want to go, like things like the introduction of a new license category for emergency services and all that sort of stuff. It's always been floating around on the table, but I think that will come into effect. And I think that's where it needs to go. So emergency services, they can have, maybe they've got their own CASA team that sort out their approvals, because if they need to fly over the movement area of a controlled aerodrome because they've got a perpetrator on there with a shotgun or something. They need to do it now. They can't wait the 21 days. And obviously that's a massive problem at the moment, but I think it's going to go that way, and there's going to be specialties within CASA. This is purely speculation as well, of course. I don't have any insider knowledge here, but that's where I would like to see it go, and that's where I do have a feeling it'll go that way to some degree. And the regulation chain will open up with that specialty and allow the operators to operate more smoothly, more efficiently in their specified niches. So agricultural space, 3D imaging space, defence contractors, etc.
Do you think there might be an opportunity around, if you wanted to be in this industry, but not necessarily fly drones, but actually be part of a CASA group, like you said, a specialised group that is emerging? Or, do you think there would be there should be people thinking about that space, like they want to be a part of it, but not necessarily want to be going out and flying, but there are other opportunities? Absolutely.
CASA's a great place to start. There are a lot of other industry groups like the AAUS as well that are advocating for the industry. So it's a great idea to be a part of. You don't need to be an operator. You don't need to be a real estate photographer. You don't need to compete. You don't need to go out there and be on the sticks all day. You can become a specialist. So, I use the example a few times to a few other people, but an agronomist could come in and specialise on the data. So they subcontract out to someone else. Someone else will capture the data. They'll go and they'll fly that drone, and that person will come in and analyse that data and specialise in suggestions and sort of reports on that. It's exactly the same in the drone space. You can specialise, like us at AVCRM, we don't fly anymore. We fly for fun, but we know the regs inside and out.
Yeah.
And our job is to guide our clients with, all right, Brendan, you want to do a facade inspection on something underground or beyond visual line of sight. How do we do it? All right, let's look at it. Where do we go?
Yeah.
So, there are so many other companies and so many other people within the industry that are doing that already. There is no shortage of opportunity within that space.
Yeah. Yep. It's coming down to picking and choosing what you want to do and honing in.
But I guess one of the reasons we started this was a lot of that information isn't very well shared. Especially us, we don't tend to talk about it unless we've got a network like we do, obviously. But we want to bring this stuff out because there are people wanting to learn the skills. And I think we all know there's plenty of opportunity for everyone. It's like we sort of learn something and everyone goes, well, I don't want to share that. I'm going to keep that to myself.
Exactly right.
Sharing is caring.
Yeah.
And a lot of us have been burnt before that. We do share something and someone goes, all right, well, that's now mine.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go and sprout that. So there are those people within the industry, as there are with anyone's. But I think this idea of this podcast and explaining what can be done, the potentials, and not just that, but actually showing people, all right, well, this is how I got started. This might actually suit you, or you could take bits of my experience, bits of Brendan's, bits of Danny's, and away we go. It's what's needed within the industry to allow industry to grow further and further as well.
Well, I think we're all sick of the US podcasts or YouTube, whatever it is, but we've got to bring our own stuff here. So
all FAA, we need to start talking about CASA, which is what we're here for.
Exactly.
That's all right.
So do we bring up the most contentious rule that we wanted to talk about with Isaac and get his viewpoints?
Bring it up.
Oh, here we go.
Yeah.
Under the bus.
All right, be ready to cut.
And stop recording.
It's only your opinion, Isaac. So just like ours, if you go for it, Danny, you might as well ask the question.
And I already threw you under the bus for it.
The 30-meter exclusion rule is what we want, the one that we're always getting. So do you kind of see that? That's one of the most challenging rules for us and most frustrating rules.
Mm-hmm.
Do you kind of see, do you have any insights, or do you kind of see where that might actually start to, because from our perspective, we tend to do a lot of inspection type work, a lot of mapping.
Yep.
And when you enter populous areas, it's highly challenging because it's the one that we can't seem to get around, especially when we're trying to do all the right things as operators naturally, because none of us want to cause problems for ourselves or anyone else.
Yeah.
But, we'd love to actually talk through that because we haven't solved it. And we seem to be going around it all the time, right? It's not really improving anything. So.
All right. So for those of you who don't know that are listening, the reduced proximity operations is you cannot fly within 30 metres of someone who's not obviously related to the operation. Now, if you've got, say, for the film people here, the talent who you're going to take photos of, you can get them to sign a specific waiver that allows you to fly between 30 and 15 metres to them. Mm-hmm. So realistically, the closest you can get to a person of the operation being 15 metres, a random member of the public 30 metres. Now, if you think about that, 30 metres, that's a long way. How are you going to get there? So that's why they brought that first waiver in. Now, I think there's good reason to have 30 metres to start because, again, a lot of the people out there, they've just got their license, they've just picked up the drone, they've done their minimum 5 hours required for a REPL, and away they go. And they don't realise the drone's facing west instead of east, and they push full sticks forward and it's gone. And it's gone the wrong direction. Now, I think what I want to see is that license type and endorsement. So you've got your standard REPL license or whatever it is that everyone can get, and then you can go for endorsements on top of that. And we link again to things such as above 400 feet and extended visual line of sight, having the equipment that's capable, so having multiple redundancies, so triple compasses or GMUs, etc., will allow that machine have that extra fail-safe. So there are people out there at the moment that are operating particular drone types that are smaller than the standard what you can get. So smaller than your Mavics, that can get an approval to fly closer than 15 metres. It is possible. Again, I'm not going to give out any trade secrets here, but I'm going to link back to what Brendan said about our operations manual. So that is your Bible. So whatever you have approved, so CASA approves your operations manuals. If you write a procedure that they then approve and say, oh, yep, that makes sense to us, we approve it, you can then operate by that. Again, your manuals aren't going to sort of override the CASA regulations, and they're not going to trump them, but they're going to provide you that safe framework to operate. So you can get a letter of an agreement, you can get a special instrument to reduce that proximity. Say, everyone knows the Hornet drone, so that little 7-gram drone that the Army used. So I think so something like that can be used because you're mitigating. It's all about risk mitigation. So if that was to hit someone, the risk of that hitting someone versus an M600. So the M600 may have the lower likelihood because you've got the triple redundancies, but if that's hit someone, it's going to hit someone.
There goes the head.
Exactly right. So I believe those endorsements will come. I don't know how soon. I don't know how long it's going to be, but I think that sort of regulation, like we've got mining companies now that are getting letter of agreements to operate above 400 feet on specific sites for 12 months at a time. So it is evolving that way, and I think we'll get even further with that. But I think you'll have to, unfortunately, sit tight for a little bit longer.
We're good at waiting.
Yeah. But do you think, I guess going back to the opportunities, and if people want to get into the industry, if they don't want to fly drones but want to be a part of the industry, where do you think would a good place to start would be? Would it be trying to get into aviation of some sort, or where do you think would be the place to start?
I always say to people, play to your strengths. So if I was interested, so say I did my geophysics degree and I loved that and that's what I lived and breathed, and then I was like, you know what, that's really cool because the Victorian EPA or someone's using a ground penetrating radar on an M600 is like, all right, well, I don't want to fly, but I can analyze the shit out of that data. So I'm going to specialize and I'm going to reach out to anyone operating that ground penetrating radar off a drone, and I'm going to provide them with the best data analytics that I possibly can, because that's what I'm good at. That's what I'm passionate at. And that's where I can find it. So I always stress to people is figure out what you want to do and what you're good at. And then how can you bring that into a different space? How can you be that niche or be that that difference to the market? And as everyone in AVCRM says, data is king. Data is the future.
Yes.
Anyone can get the data, but only certain people can do the right things with the data.
And it gives you that historical view as well, right? No matter what you're doing, you can go back to that data and see what was happening back then. So, yeah.
Exactly.
That's very valid.
Good perspective.
Right on, guys.
Any other tidbits, Isaac, that we haven't covered?
Oh, no. If you're not on AVCRM, get on it and watch this space. There's a lot of exciting stuff happening in the next 3 to 6 months. There's a lot of good stuff coming out.
Speaking about getting some people into AVCRM, I hear you have an offer for our listeners and viewers.
Yeah, great. So what we're doing is we're offering anyone that's come through the podcast, there is a promo code, which Sean will remind me of shortly. This promo code is valid for 50% off your first year of subscription. So if that's a sole user, you've got 3 pilots, if you've got 5 pilots, anywhere up to the first 5, we're going to do 50% off it. If you've got more than 5 and still want a discount, hey, just call us and tell us that the Drone Down Under boys sent you, and we'll hook you up. But 50% off for the first year, valid through to the end of the year. So good stocking filler, get yourself some compliance for Chrissy.
And
make your life easy for next year.
We clearly all endorse it. So I think just 100%. Get on and do it and save yourself 6 to 12 months of mucking around. Yeah. So the code, and we'll put it up obviously for the people on video, it's DDUP-50-OFF. So we'll put up on screen as well. And we'll obviously put the website avcrm.com. So
.net.
Sorry, avcrm.net.
Right onto it.
It's on my book. It's on my bookmark list. So
yeah,
good.
Yeah, tab.
Yeah. So if I have 2 letters and the whole thing pops up, it's amazing. So Isaac, we have a little segment we're going to wrap up with called 6 in 60. So you have 60 seconds to answer 6 questions. Sean's going to get the timer ready for us. Brace yourself, everyone.
Short and sharp, Isaac. They don't have to be long. It's just got to make a quick decision.
When you're ready, sir.
All righty. In 3, 2, 1. What's your favorite drone?
Mavic 2 Enterprise Advanced.
Nice. What's your favorite color?
What's the African velocity of a sparrow? I don't know. Green.
Don't ask us.
Yeah. Nice. What's your favorite ice cream flavor?
Hot chocolate.
Oh, good taste.
Yeah.
What's your favorite car?
Oh, Aston Martin DB9.
Ooh, very nice. This one's for Ty. Star Wars or Star Trek?
Star Wars.
Yeah, good man. Finally. Lucky last. Who's your favorite host?
Oh, it's going to be me this week. Can't pick between all you guys.
Check these questions up. They keep getting us on this one.
Well done. You're the guest, mate. You can't be a host.
Just can't pick between you all.
Yeah.
Look at these faces.
They're all so dashingly good looking.
Someone will eventually just pick and be absolutely ruthless. It'll happen one day. We'll get someone.
It will for sure. It will for sure.
So you just had 5 seconds, by the way. So well done.
Well done.
Oh man, why does what is your favorite color always throw everyone?
Hey, it's not hard. Photography
is so hard.
Yeah, photographers is fuck.
Awesome.
Well, gentlemen, I think that pretty much wraps this all up. Isaac, thank you from all of us for coming on board. It's been a pretty awesome day.
Yeah, it's been a great chat.
Thanks very much.
I got another 7 hours in me, so if you want, I could go all night, guys.
We'll put your number right down here for everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I think everyone has my number anyway. But no, guys, thanks for having me on. Really appreciate it. Excited for what's next.
What's the best way to get a hold of you, Isaac, other than your phone number? We'll put it probably down here. But if you jump on that avcrm.net, there's a phone number, there's a live help, there's a support ticket, and there's an email. All of those come through to me. Okay.
Take your pick. I think there's an address for a carrier pigeon as well, so I'll get it.
There you go.
We have approvals for that as well now. Matt, how many hours on your pigeon?
Make sure you check the maintenance.
Yeah.
Mine's leaking on the car again.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Have a good one.
Awesome. Thanks,
Thanks, guys.
See ya.
Thank you.